If this place shuts down, oil prices explode, economies collapse, and a global war could begin. And the most disturbing part, everything depends on a single point on the map. That place is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water that most people have never even heard of. Yet, it quietly controls nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply. Right now, it is one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Imagine this. Every single day, massive oil tankers move through this route, each one carrying millions of barrels of oil, energy that powers cities, industries, transportation, entire economies. Now imagine all of that being forced through a space so narrow that in some areas it's only about 33 kilometers wide. That's barely enough room for two shipping lanes, one going in and one going out. No room for error, no room for chaos. And yet, this is exactly where the world has placed one of its most critical lifelines. Because without this route, countries across Asia, Europe, and beyond would struggle to function. We're not just talking about fuel. We're talking about electricity, food supply chains, global trade. Everything is connected. But what makes this place truly dangerous is not its size. It's who controls it. On one side is Iran. On the other side, some of the most important shipping routes in the world, protected by Western allies. And for decades, this area has been filled with tension. Military ships constantly patrol these waters. Surveillance aircraft monitor every movement. And behind the scenes, there is a constant game of pressure and warning. Iran has made its position very clear over the years. If we cannot export our oil, then no one will. That statement alone has kept global markets on edge because it implies something very specific. Not just conflict, but control. And control over this narrow passage means control over a massive portion of the world's energy, which means the power to disrupt entire economies. And this isn't just theoretical. This has already come dangerously close to reality. In 2019, several oil tankers were attacked in this exact region. Explosions ripped through the hulls of massive ships. Fires broke out in open water. Crew members were forced to evacuate into the sea. For a moment, it felt like the situation could spiral out of control. Within hours, global markets reacted. Oil prices jumped. Governments issued warnings. Military forces increased their presence. Because everyone understood the same thing. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a signal of how fragile this entire system really is. Because the truth is, it doesn't take much to disrupt this route. Not a full-scale war. Not a massive invasion. Just a few calculated moves. Naval mines placed in key locations can make entire sections of water too dangerous to cross. Missiles launched from the coastline can target ships before they even have time to react. Even a single damaged tanker can block critical pathways. And once that happens, everything slows down. Ships hesitate, routes are delayed, insurance costs skyrocket, and the flow of oil begins to choke. But here's where it becomes even more serious. Because when the flow of oil slows down, the effects don't stay in one region. They spread fast. Fuel prices begin to rise. Transportation becomes more expensive. Airlines, shipping companies, and logistics networks all start adjusting. And those costs get passed down to everyone else. Groceries become more expensive. Products take longer to arrive. Entire industries begin to feel the pressure. And all of it can be traced back to one place. One narrow passage of water, the Strait of Hormuz. A place that looks insignificant on a map, but holds an enormous amount of power over the modern world. And the most unsettling part is how quickly everything could change. Not months, not weeks, hours, one decision, one miscalculation, one act of aggression, and the entire balance could shift. But the real question is, what happens next? Because what happens next changes everything. If the Strait of Hormuz is ever fully closed, the world would not have the luxury of waiting. The response would be immediate, and it would be massive. The United States, along with its allies, would almost certainly be forced to act. Not just to reopen a shipping route, but to prevent a global economic collapse. Because at that point, this is no longer a regional issue. It becomes a global crisis. Naval forces would move in. Warships, submarines, aircraft carriers, all positioned to secure the passage. Air patrols would intensify, surveillance would increase, and every movement would be watched closely. But here's the problem. When multiple military powers operate in such a tight space, the margin for error disappears. One misinterpreted signal, one defensive move seen as an attack, one wrong decision, and suddenly, it's no longer about protecting ships. It's about survival, because any direct confrontation in this region would escalate fast, faster than most people realize. Iran has invested heavily in asymmetric warfare, fast attack boats, coastal missile systems, naval mines designed to disrupt and confuse. They don't need to win a traditional war. They just need to make the strait unusable. And even a temporary disruption could send shockwaves through the entire global system. Oil prices wouldn't just rise. They would spike dramatically, within hours. Markets would react instantly. Stock exchanges could drop. Currencies could fluctuate wildly. Investors would move into panic mode. And governments would be forced to respond. Strategic reserves might be released. Emergency policies could be enacted. But even then, it might not be enough. Because the modern world runs on stability, and this would shatter it. But the consequences don't stop at economics. They go much further. A prolonged conflict in this region could pull in multiple countries, not by choice, but by necessity. Alliances would be tested, defense agreements activated, military commitments honored, and what starts as a localized conflict could quickly expand into something much larger, a chain reaction. Because in today's interconnected world, no major disruption stays isolated. Energy affects everything: transportation, food production, manufacturing, technology. Remove or restrict that flow, and the entire system begins to strain. Now imagine that pressure combined with military escalation. That's how global crises begin. Not with a single event, but with a series of reactions that build on each other. And the most dangerous part is that no one fully controls how it ends. Because once escalation begins, it becomes incredibly difficult to stop. Decisions are made quickly, under pressure, with limited information. And history has shown that those are the moments where mistakes happen. The kind of mistakes that change everything. All of this from one narrow stretch of water. The Strait of Hormuz, a place that most people will never see, yet one that holds enormous influence over daily life around the world. Gas prices, food costs, economic stability, all connected to whether this route stays open. And right now, it remains open, but tensions still exist. Military presence is constant, warnings continue, which means the possibility is always there, not guaranteed, but real. And that's what makes it so unsettling, because the world depends on this place remaining stable, and stability is never guaranteed. So now the question is, if everything depends on this narrow passage, How long can it remain untouched? And more importantly, if something does happen, will the world be ready?